So we're doing a little warm-up before we take another group quiz on paper. And the worksheet for today, after you're done with the group quiz, the worksheet is going to be things like this, where we say, here's sine squared. What are some things you could put in? Well, the obvious one is the sister function, and that's 1 over cosecant. That one, you should know sister functions, and you could be like, oh yeah, got to swap it for the sister. But the one that's not so obvious is where you take sine squared plus cosine squared, and it equals 1. And you can solve that and figure out what sine squared is. If I subtract cosine squared from both sides, I see that sine squared is 1 minus cosine squared. Who had it before I said it? Okay, good. I have been pounding on that one for a while. And then, is there anything else on the sheet that has sine in it? I could see a kid saying, this one has sine in it. But do you remember me saying that this kind you cannot square them? So I cannot use that identity for this because you can't square that kind. The odd-even identities can't be squared. All right. Is there anything else? Can this be like something over something? Like sine over cosine? Sine isn't sine over cosine. Can you think of anything else? Okay. Then I think that's the last one that we could put in for sine squared. All right, here's one that's got 3 choices. Tangent squared. There's 3 separate things that you could put in instead of tangent squared. And so therefore you see tangent on your tests a lot because we like to make you think of all 3 things that you could put in for it. In fact, if you really stretch, you could put in 4 things. No, wait, I'm wrong, because you can't square those odd even ones. I think there's only 3. I think there's only 3. Winston Wheaton, can you tell me what is 2 of the 3? It's usually easier to get 2 of them, and the third one's hard.
Secant squared minus 1.
Okay, let me make sure that I'm going to write out the 1 with the tan is what you seek. And you just subtracted 1 from both sides. That is totally right. Tangent is secant squared minus 1. That was just a fact off the sheet, and you just had to subtract 1 from both sides. I like it. Got another one, Winston? I'll give you a hint. It involves sine and cosine.
To make it equal tans.
Yep.
Would they both be squared?
Yep.
So would it be sine squared?
Yep.
Theta and cosine squared theta?
You got it. Remember my advice, if you can, change everything into sine and cosine? That's how tangent can turn into sine and cosine. Okay, and then there's one more. A random lucky person. Throw one, person 1. Yeah, that's you. Remember? 1 over cotangent. Very good. So which one should you pick? Well, it depends on the problem. It depends on the problem. You could even argue that sometimes you could make tangent squared into tangent times tangent. Would you agree that's the same exact thing as tangent squared? All right. So if, for instance, I had tangent squared, everybody write this one out. Tangent squared times secant times cosine times cotangent Whenever there's just a big line of them like that, they're usually looking for you to swap them out with sister functions. But that tangent is the only one that's squared. So it's not going to really play nice with the other ones unless you break it into two separate tangents. See if you can simplify this one all the way down. I'm going to pause for a second. You'll swap out some sister functions. A bunch of things will cancel. And by the way, if you're ever left with something like 1 over tangent, you can't leave it that way. You got to make it the sister function then, which would be like cosecant. Or, sorry, in this case, it would be cotangent. Never leave it like this. You got to get it down to one normal function that's not in a fraction if you can. I hinted at this. I break it into two tangents. You can do that because then with this cotangent here, the cotangent can be 1 over tangent. And do you get then that this 1 over tangent and this regular tangent will cancel each other out? That's part of your answer. Okay? And then secant and cosine, what's going on with those? Well, do you remember my number one tip? Change everything into sines and cosines. If you haven't done that with your group yet, do that. And then hopefully you'll just be left with one function at the end, or a number. Or sometimes it's a function plus a number, like tangent plus 2, or 2 tangent. Raise your hand if your group is already done. All right, it's about half of you, so I need to give it a little more time. Okay, that's all about the time I think we can donate to this. Secant, I said change everything into sines and cosines. That's 1 over cosine. And it gets multiplied by cosine. You don't have to change all of them. So I'm going to change that one so that this and this will cancel. Cosine times 1 over cosine cancels. 1 over tangent times tangent cancels, and it's just tangent. Raise your hand if you had that one right. Okay, good. All right, so this is the part where I'm going to hand out a 5-question on paper quiz. If it's a proof, you have to simplify one side, and until at the end your answer is like this. You have to have it say exactly the same thing on both sides, and you can only simplify one side. So if the problem was here, the work is all about showing the work on a proof. Make sure you show your work really well in this little proof. All right, so we're going to do this worksheet. That's going to get done fairly quick. Then your homework is another worksheet, but honestly, most groups finished with both by the end of the hour. You should walk out of here with no homework. Okay, I did tell the other class one more thing that I should probably tell you to keep it fair. I said that, for example, let's say that you had 2 over sine. You can't leave it like that. You have to get it down to just one function. So what would you do? You'd put, instead of sine, I know you don't have this exact problem, but it'd be like this. You could put 1 over cosecant, and then that means it flips over and goes up to the top. And so this would be cosecant over 1. So don't leave it like this. You can't do that. You got to switch to the sister function and flip and multiply. And the final answer, I know yours is slightly different, but it's like this. The final answer would look kind of like that. All right, so you can't leave it like that. I'm not saying the answer is cosecant.
Well, yeah, so